Hey everybody, welcome to Critical Thoughts. I'm your host, Braxton Smith, and joining me, as usual, Jake Bird, co-host. Today is December 31st of 2018, and as usual, here we are again to talk about the triumphs and tribulations of the past year, except this time we're changing it up a bit. We're going to keep it a little shorter and just focus on the top three most significant events of the year. You want to throw any comments before we get started, Jake?
Yeah, we were already talking about it earlier, but seems like a lot of things aren't as clear cut now. Go figure. After an election where we had two shit show candidates, the world is murky.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with one of the first ones on my list, anyways, and that is the Yellow Vest movement happening in France. And see, Jake and I, we didn't tell each other what these are, so these are totally legit reactions here. So Yellow Vest movement, what happened with that was the France, it all started in France a few months ago when they had a tax hike delivered by cuckboy Prime Minister Macron. The Prime Minister of France invoked a 5% fuel tax on an already unaffordable fuel, making lives all the more difficult for France. And when asked what the reason for it was, he said it was for the immigration, all the diversity that was being brought into France to turn it into, as he calls it, his words not mine, turn Europe into Eurabia. So naturally people are a little pissed off about that, and so what they did is they donned these yellow vests. And the inside joke about that is that in France it's actually required by law to have, I believe it's either one or two yellow vests in your vehicle. So in the event your vehicle breaks down, you get out and you throw the yellow vest on to do whatever you need to do. Safety and all that garbage they always try to push on us is for your safety. So they all donned their yellow vest, and they have been pretty violently protesting. They're really pissed off. We've actually seen pictures where even the Eiffel Tower is just covered in smoke from the tires they're burning in the cities. They actually came out again Saturday for yet another protest. Police have turned rubber bullets. They've been shooting into the crowds, rubber bullets. They actually had pictures of a guy with his face ripped open. And a few people have died so far. But I mean, these people are dragging out guillotines, like trying to send a message. And probably the most hilarious thing I've seen so far was where Macron went to, what was it, Argentina, I want to say it was Argentina. And
Brazil.
Brazil? What was it, Brazil?
Yes.
That makes all the more sense, because Brazil's really been on point lately, if you've been following them at all. Brazil. So he went to visit Brazil, and normally you would have kind of like a parade, welcoming committee. And the only person the Brazil Prime Minister sent to greet him, which apparently was a total misunderstanding, but it was a guy in a yellow vest. It was the only guy he saw, so obviously they got a picture of him, and he's just like, "Don't kill me," like everybody wants to do. But yeah, he turned out to just be an airport employee. It was just a very convenient situation, I suppose. But yeah, that was one of those things. That's kind of why we did a top three instead of like a three good, three bad, because for me this was the gray area. I can't really say if this is good or bad, because there's some people arguing that they're protesting to tax the rich more, which they're already taxed like what, 101%, the rich elite.
I don't know enough about France, but it's Europe, so who knows.
Well, they're taxed into oblivion as it is, and the word is that the people aren't too worried about the people coming in to cuck them and steal their money that they work for. They're more so worried about extracting more wealth from the already completely exploited rich. So that was my number three, anyways.
Well, I mean, it's not even just maybe about the motivations and stuff, but I've also heard that there's been a lot of private property also destroyed during these riots too.
It's not a good look.
No, it's not a good look.
That's like French Revolution kind of shit. And we saw how that turned out.
Yeah. Or, I don't know. Maybe you can make some correlations to other protest groups and then undisclosed our native country.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
something.
But the thing is, though, is we have to understand too is that there is the full political spectrum is out in force. I mean, you have like ANCOMs, ANCAPs, your alt-right and your left libertarians, your the full spectrum is out there. We've seen all their banisters, so obviously you're going to have some of your Antifa fags going out there and like tearing shit up. So like you can't really judge just like a few fucked up instances on what just a few opportunists do, I suppose. So I'm kind of like waiting to see how this all unfolds. Will they go on to a better leader from Macron? I hope they dethrone him for starters, but that remains to be seen. So, Jake, go ahead with your number 3 one, huh? I want to hear it. I'm curious. Jake's doing the low-key stuff, by the way. Spoiler.
I tried to focus a little bit on the low-key, but for the more broad term, I was looking at the SCOTUS rulings that we've had so far this year, and I was actually wanting it to be more balanced or whatever, but for the most part, it's been good. And so, first one I want to bring up is class versus the United States. And that one's pretty much about what was it again? I'm trying to find the... Oh, yeah. If you make a guilty plea for a current law and get charged and stuff, do you still get to challenge the constitutionality of the convention at like a later plea agreement or something? So basically it's saying, there's that fundamental right of jury nullification where you get to actually question the constitutionality of laws. If you plead guilty, does that go away? And this case says that no, it doesn't. Even if you plead yourself guilty, if at some point in time for an amendment or a later challenge afterwards to the actual law, you can still go, yes, I can do this. And I can prove that the law itself was unconstitutional. Just pleading yourself guilty to it does not waive your right to challenge that law.
That's actually really awesome because how many times have y'all heard, and I mean, I've even been in a case myself, well, several cases. I think if you ever had a traffic ticket, you've been in a situation where they tell you to take the guilty plea bargain. So you plead guilty and then they reduce the sentence. And oftentimes you're put into this situation where they have they have like your horizontal loading and they have your vertical loading. So your horizontal loading for your charges is when they slap on a whole bunch of other charges that like pretty much follows all under one anyways. And they agree to knock off like all the bullshit charges they threw on there. And then you have the vertical charge where they take one charge and they, instead of making it like, say for example, you accidentally killed somebody, they will say that instead of it being murder, we'll reduce it to manslaughter if you plead guilty. So that sounds like a pretty good thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I'm saying that for the most part, the cases I've looked at, it's actually been mostly positive, even though a certain political side of us said that, the second coming apocalypse was coming because two Supreme Court people were being nominated by Trump. But
turned out to be a total fucking joke. Anyway, Brett Kavanaugh, ugh. I mean, that was another one I was kind of wanted to, but another one, Collins v. Virginia. This one has to do with
private property boundaries. There's this cop in Virginia looking for a stolen motorcycle. And so he's driving around, and sure enough, he sees under a tire, a motorcycle that looks like it fits the description, but he can't see the license plate for it. So he actually walks onto the dude's property, lifts up the tarp to see the license, and then he goes and talks to the owner after he verifies that. That gets thrown out now. Someone can't just walk up onto your property unannounced to do a search, even if it's a tarp, and try to use that against you. It's the security.
Definitely a goof on the cop's part. He should have known straight up. As tempting as it is, because it is like, hey, you're just lifting a tarp, but no, at the end of the day, I mean, lifting a tarp, turning a door handle, that's an illegal search. That's a breach of the Fourth Amendment. Yeah,
and it's like, well, again, back to the theme I was talking about the evil apocalypse coming because of Trump's nomination. This decision was 8-1, okay?
Oh, wow.
8 of the justices voted, no, you can't do that, cop. The one who didn't was Alito, which is the guy I've always kind of had problems with. But, Gorsuch, the evil Clarence Thomas, how he's supposed to be a bad guy with his originalist views. They were like, no, cop, you overstepped.
Cool. All right. Yeah, that's low-key AF, but that actually is like a win. Like, how often do you hear about that happening anymore? Usually with the Constitution, if something's happened with the Constitution, it's your rights being stripped away. How often is it going the other way? That's rare. That's a win.
All right. And then another one that happened earlier in the year was McCoy v. Louisiana. And this is pretty much... this guy was going to trial, and he actually wanted to fight it all the way through. I forget what he was actually being charged with. Oh, first-degree murder. Okay, there we go. Had to refresh that. But he's being charged with first-degree murder of his son, his mother, and his stepfather. And he wanted to fight it all the way through the court, but his defense attorney... I don't know what his reasonings are, but he goes into the court and he says, nah, we're taking the guilty. And he stands out there and goes, we plead guilty, Your Honor, for the reduced sentences and stuff.
Sounds like a government-appointed attorney there.
Yeah, and this whole case is about the fact, of course he challenged that, right? Because he didn't want the guilty plea. And so now it's of constitutional record that no, just because your defense attorney thinks that's the best idea for your situations, he's there to actually represent you and not just do what he thinks is best.
Yeah. Well, cool, man. That's it's kind of all links together. That's definitely a win. Can I move on to number 2 for me?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So number 2 for me was the simultaneous censorship done by the social media sites. So we saw recently, in fact, actually we posted on Critical Thoughts about how we were even threatened by Facebook to be banned, which, one of my rare Sidious moments, I'm like, do it. Strike us down. Just because I really just want to move to another social media site, honestly. I'm tired of focusing on Facebook anymore. I've had this conversation with Jake. I hate feeding this monster that is Facebook. But what was really creepy to me about it, though, is how they all simultaneously, they deny it, but it's right there in front of you that Facebook, Apple, Google, and their branches like YouTube, Twitter, they all simultaneously banned Alex Jones. And obviously they went on that he was the starting point. They started with him because he's this crazy conspiracy theorist that throws out these theories about the Parkland shootings and all that crap. And they spin him as being this lunatic that needs to be silenced anyways. And that's how it always starts. They start with something that most people would agree with. if they haven't really listened to the guy. And then it works from there. It works out from there. They start banning. They start threatening us. Even is like what we got 160 followers. But then they go and they straight up ban several other pages. The names escape me right now, but I actually, there's like 3 pages I was following that were deleted from Facebook. I don't bother with Twitter. I'm on Gab. I don't bother with them. Gab's superior as far as I'm concerned. But I just thought it was all equally disturbing that it was done right around election time, and they estimate that the numbers of accounts so far as like individual users and pages that Facebook banned was a little over 1 billion. I don't even know how that's possible, but that's a lot of banning, and it's just in time for the election. And they actually have done research to find that Google was able to sway a significant amount of voters through their search engine results. So they manipulate how you search. Like, so if you go to look up, for example, Clinton scandals or whatever, they end up bringing articles up that say how the Clintons committed no scandals. And it's just, everything is just warped. They warp everything, and so it warps people's opinions. Because if like you're looking for the answers and the only answers you're given is their leftist opinion, obviously, if you aren't a critical thinker, you aren't going to question that, and you're just going to take that for granted. And then you have with Facebook, where they constantly put all these leftist posts at the top. Occupy Democrats, now shit, the 98%, all their leftist slop, and it's like the worst, most embarrassing. Even PolitiFact and Snopes, as leftist as they are, even admit that Occupy Democrats has never posted a truthful posting. So, so they keep posting that, and basically it just brainwashes people into believing these things. So for me, in 2018, that was probably one of the most significant events to me, because it was basically winning the war over people's minds pretty solidly for the election. But as we saw in the election, the people aren't so easily duped. In Alabama, unfortunately, they were, but elsewhere, it the blue wave turned into a blue ripple. So, so it wasn't a total loss, but it at the end of the day, it was a loss, because that is like one less buffer we have. That is one more thing working in favor of the authoritarians.
Yeah, I'd like to piggy off of that a little bit too, because there's also what we've been going through recently with now funding sources kind of wanting to put the hatchets on people like Patreon and stuff.
PayPal. Yeah.
And it's like, coincidence? I think not, especially since the more they talk with Patreon and stuff, and there's also transcripts now of their safety and security team or whatever having a discussion with some of their Patreon users to settle any discomforts they might have since the whole Sargon of Akkad, Carl Benjamin got thrown off.
Yeah, apparently they fucked up big with that one, I heard. Apparently he had a huge following, and even the people that weren't following him were like, hey, I don't even like the guy, but what are you doing?
Yeah, well, it's not even that. Like I was saying, there's some of the people that have actually gotten transcriptions of their talks with their safety coordinator or whatever, and during the whole thing, the woman's pretty much going, we do it by a case-by-case basis, and the guys are just going, okay, so if I said some of these things right here, are you saying that I have a chance of, being in the same situation as Sargon or something, Am I going to lose my livelihood?
It's hate speech, Jake.
Well, it's on a case-by-case basis. And it's like, okay, so it's utterly subjective. You have no principled way of applying this. And it's just basically how you feel, right? Or if the mob stirs up enough disgruntlement against this person, that's when you start looking into it. That's...
Oh, it's way worse than that, man. They had an article. I saw an article recently released by Zero Hedge where they had interviewed a former employee of Facebook, and they had like, it was like, I think they said it was like somewhere between, like, it's either 570 or 5,700. I can't remember. I'm bad at remembering these things. But they would sit down for breakfast, and they would talk over breakfast about the rules they were going to implement for whether or not they were going to ban users. In fact, it was 570. It was somewhere in the thousands of moderators that would actually implement those rules that these elite executives came up with over breakfast to arbitrarily enforce to shut down free speech on their platforms. Which at the end of the day, they have the safety net of being a free speech platform, yet they aren't held accountable for any slander that they, one way or another, indirectly publish. So I think it's kind of annoying how they work as a monopoly to get all the perks of being an honest, decent free speech platform, but then they get to inject their politics into all of it. It's totally corrupt.
Yeah, regardless if you want to start talking the distinction between just being a platform and when do you actually become like a content producer and managing the rules, we can still see in a lot of cases, as you mentioned, the infamous Occupy Democrats, they don't apply those standards evenly. And that's the main thing. Whatever you want to do, that's fine. But if that's the way you want to do it, you've got to at least hold to your own standards. If you're not even holding to your own standards, then why should we even trust anything that you do? Right? You could just, on a whim, change your mind.
Yeah, you got to ban Alex Jones's hate speech about family, freedom, and America. But then ISIS comes out with, hey, check it out, join ISIS. Chop the head off of some Norwegian women over in Morocco. Yeah, that's fine. It's ISIS. I mean, it's diversity. It's our strength.
I sense a segue coming on, but I guess the last thing I want to talk about that is another interesting thing that I've noticed along with this whole internet manipulation thing is a lot of the news sites online that focus heavy on algorithms like BuzzFeed and Mike, they're starting to tank now with all the algorithm changes that Facebook and them are doing. And, BuzzFeed's even having to rely on selling cookingware, of all things. So...
What's wrong with selling cookingware?
Because they're supposed to be a news site. I mean, that's what I'm saying. So
Alright, so let me just explain to the viewers. This is a little inside joke. I used to sell cast iron and actually planned on doing a contest later on where we'd be giving cast iron away to the contest winners. Spoiler. So that was kind of why I just made that comment there. Because we're supposed to be a news aggregate for the consumers, the viewers right now, and yet I sell cast iron on the side. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jake.
But that's pretty much it. I know you're real worried about the algorithms and stuff, but it's like that's how you can really tell when something has no substance. Because if they can't just use the clickbait and trying to follow what some other thing is trying to put out instead of actually going out and, investigating what's out there, they tank.
Yeah, investigative journalism is dead, and that's what I really, it surprises me about Gulag is that they have this fucked up algorithm search. Like I said, they keep screwing with the algorithm. And naturally, man is naturally logical. That's what separates us from the animals, is that we're able to logically, take in data and say, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense. The search results of Gulag doesn't make sense 9 out of 10 times, unless you're looking up, a recipe. But if you're ever trying to find, answers for anything political or anything news-related going on in the world, they're going to give you a bunch of nonsense. And it baffles me how they're still relevant. I think they just have such a powerful infrastructure established that maybe it doesn't matter anymore. Like maybe because like all the like DuckDuckGo, that's what I use. But at the end of the day, it sometimes it falls short of Gulag. If you ever want to look up like your news or politics, DuckDuckGo is the way to go. But anything else, people will just do a Google search. Google search it, they always say. So I don't know. I think it's only a matter of time before they fall too, before somebody else just presents a completely superior option and product that the consumer just they can't go off that flawed algorithm anymore. So I hope, anyways. All right, we're ready to move on to number one.
Well, one of mine. Well, I've got a couple more, but anyways, speaking of things that we've advertised that haven't gone anywhere, Calexit.
Yeah. Yeah, I forgot about that one. Actually, and I just did a video on it. And the elections went down and it completely escaped me. Yeah, I guess the Calexit didn't happen. That's kind of a bummer for everybody.
I think the official position right now is that they're first trying to make sure that they can get approval from the other states that, okay, if we come up with this vote in our own state, will y'all let us go from the union? And that's why they haven't done their little referendum or whatever in California to that effect. But, it's I don't really see it going anywhere. I'm not for sure how many of our legislators and fellow American citizens want to just let them go. But even if they were inclined to do so, there's doing it in good faith, and then there's reading some of the things they've said, and it's like, if you've gone to their page, they go like, yeah, we're essentially going to use the evil of the right to actually let us go, right? We're depending on their evil racism and stuff, and it's like, I don't know, but that kind of, I'm fine with them going, but there's a side of me, let's say 5% of me just wants to be the troll and go, nah, man, we're Americans, bro. What are you trying to do?
I'm not a racist. No, I want you to stay.
Yeah.
Very spiteful 5% of you, Jake. And ironically, out of all the presidents that have been around for the last century, I think it would be close between Reagan and Trump on which one, ironically, would actually be okay with that. One, because it's like they kind of look at California, or that part of California that wants to Calexit, as a cancer. And two, they aren't willing to sacrifice American lives to fight a civil war. I see them as, because that's, to me, it's like you have your secret society of elitists, like your presidents that we've had recently. I mean, George Bush, Jimmy Carter, Barack Obama. They're all cut from the same cloth of global elitism. To me, they're all on the same page with each other. But then you have Trump, which is why they're trying to get rid of the guy. He's fighting all that, and I could definitely see him as being like, oh, well, I mean, we're these United States of America. If you guys want to go, that's your right. That he's not the president that signs into place the Patriot Act or the Freedom Act, or even worse, reinstates it. He's not the type of president to do that, like the last 3 or 4 presidents we've had. So, ironically, he's their best chance at Calexit actually happening. So, if he's not elected next cycle, they can go ahead and toss that idea out the window. Which I guess for them that would be okay, because more than likely, if he doesn't win, they'll probably have some piece of shit like Hillary Clinton or whatever whatever slop they end up throwing in office.
Well, I mean, I don't know if he's the best chance, but there's an interesting point in that, because if they do get a Democrat elected and stuff, then all of a sudden it's not going to be, oh, we want to be free. It's more like, let's help the machine confine the races, right? Let's spread our beautiful and prosperous ideas out by force.
Yeah, right. Just kind of what they do whenever the California refugees come to the rest of the states. They come into the states and they end up bringing their glorious commie ideas with them, and they turn Arizona and Oregon and Washington into the same shitholes they came from. And Texas even. They're invading Texas too, apparently.
Now, side note, I've heard conflicting reports as far as Texas goes, whether it's just like the rich natives there starting to lose their way versus the incoming immigrants going like, no, dude, nah, wrong way. But again, it's conflicting, and yeah, it seems to be the pattern. I'll say that much about it. But
so you're gonna cheat and throw in another one of yours, or do I get to do my number one? Hang on, give me a Hillary Clinton moment here. Alright, I think we might make it to the rest of the show without that.
Well, we've been alternating, so go ahead. You can get first cut.
Thank you, mein Oberskrubenführer. So, number one for this guy, I would have to say would be the fact that Trump, first president to bring the end of 3 wars for America. North Korea, Syria, and what was it, Iraq or Afghanistan? I get those two shitholes mixed up. Which one is it? I want to say it's Iraq. He was pulling out of.
We're not getting out of Afghanistan just yet, though there is talk.
Dope. So 4 wars. Like, if he pulls out of 4 wars, 3 wars is already huge in and of itself. I mean, North Korea's been on since, what, the 50s? Finally coming to an end, which I think is funny. I actually saw a meme recently that cracked me up. The meme was talking about how it's funny how in 2018 the tyrannical leader of a communistic regime is easier to negotiate with than the Democratic Party. That is to say, like, you know, here you have this guy who is declared God of his country, this delusional dictator of North Korea that did all these atrocities, was brought to reason. Hey man, let's peace treaty, let's go. And you know, a lot of people argued whether or not that actually happened, but I mean, the leaders of North and South Korea for the first time since the Korean War came across borders and shook hands, and we're talking peace negotiations. They haven't been finalized, but they might as well be. We've seen progress like we haven't seen before since the 50s. And so then you have, again, with Syria, what we find out is we had this Syrian conflict. And, you know, there was actually, at the beginning of the year, we had a post where I was worried about, oh, shit, you know, Trump's launching all these missiles over into Syria, going to cause a huge conflict. It really scared the crap out of me. That was going to be like one of my biggest moments of 2018 until I realized he was pulling out of Syria. He realized ISIS was no longer in Syria. And so then he had this huge falling out with, what was it, John Bolton? About, hey, why are we still in Syria if ISIS is gone? And now he's also looking at pulling out of Iraq. So, to me, that lands him in a very plausible position for greatest president in over a century. Pulling out of 3 wars, huge.
Well, on with the whole North Korea thing, you know, they're actually supposed to be building a joint railway system now, so that's a big thing. One of the steps to maybe, if not 2 halves of a unified country, at least not actively with military angst and depression going on, if you're working on a railway system between everything. But, you know, I'll say this much, you know, there's been plenty of times in the past some presidents have gone, oh, we're starting to pull out, and then things act up again, and It's like, sorry guys, we got to go back. We got to go
Yeah.
back. And it's like, I'm going to wait for that shoe to fall first
Right.
before
Yeah, I can see that happening.
signing that endorsement.
Yeah, this is what happened with Iraq. You know, Obama was making a really good move on pulling us out of Iraq, and then some kerfuffle came up and justified us going back into Iraq. See, the same thing happened with Syria. I mean, how many times have they staged a fake gas attack and blamed Bashar al-Assad on the whole deal, later to find out, oh, it was all staged, and then it happens again, and they're like, oh, the damn tyrannical regime, and oh, it was another faked one. It's like I've been watching a series of unfortunate events. It kind of reminds me of that. You know, it's like Count Olaf, just time and again, it's always him, but never believe the kids. You know, like, hey, this guy, he seems legitimate. Let's fucking believe him. You'd have to watch it. If you watch it, you'd totally get what I'm saying, but it's wonkiness. It just doesn't make sense. But getting back to, yeah, funny how Trump can negotiate with a North Korean who doesn't speak English, tyrannical, godlike dictator, godlike in his own mind, but he can't negotiate a $5 billion wall with Democrats who have no problem with spinning us into oblivion, if that hasn't been made abundantly clear. I don't know if they're doing it to spite him or if they're really just worried about losing voters. I don't know. Anyways, Jake, I think you're froze up, man. Oh, there you are. Okay, you're back. All right, so I just knocked out my number one. What do you got left for us?
My main one is the least low-key one is fake news, obviously. It's like, you know, I've never really liked Trump. We weren't really on the Trump bandwagon. The most I can ever say with the guy is, you know, he's at best the least of two evils that were presented. You know, you're kind of over there making like the heroic charge with him and everything, but you know, there's been serious times where, for instance, banning of bump stocks. We come for the guns, and then we do due process later. You know, there's been enough.
Look, bro, on the bump stocks, I gotta tell you straight up, bump stocks strategically have no value. I think that was just a bone he was throwing them. I could be wrong, but like legitimately speaking,
you can say he's throwing a bone. You can say he's throwing a bone, but how was it classified? Oh, a machine gun. So you're twisting up good law just to throw them a bone. it's that's what I don't get with it. And let me get to my main point. Anyways, you know, obviously I've got problems with the guy. Obviously, there's times where he's made plenty of stupid gaffes and said some outrageous things. But the thing that seems to prove the most true over time is his whole fake news comment. The mainstream media, they're just fake news. They're doing whatever they can to get at me and get at America and stuff. And my gosh, they keep proving them true on that one. They keep wanting to attack most of his silliest gaffes for the most part, and then utterly fabricate other things. And you know, we talked about the whole Brett Kavanaugh thing. You know, that's all mysteriously gone away. We know that they held evidence. What was it? Was it Washington Post that held the convenient facts that there was a witness that was disagreeing with the entire testimony of one of the accusers? There's been, you know, the Andrew Cuomo. Oh my gosh, you know, he had this, you know, testimony of someone purchasing an AR-15, and that turned out to be false. You know, he went away with it. It was like they were forcing it onto him when he was buying the AR-15. That was crap. You know, time and time again. Oh, another Kavanaugh highlight. His clerk in the background flashing the white power symbol. Okay.
Jake, none of that white supremacist shit on our show, okay?
Yeah, you know, for years I thought that was just going like, okay, buddy, you know.
No, it means pay up, asshole. Well, and Japan, anyways. Yeah, that's actually funny. Funny thing is it's a sad day when CNN, NBC, MSNBC, all these news outlets, they actually become less reliable. Fox News even has truly lived up to the libtards faux news slant they give on it. Yeah, they're getting pretty bad too. It's a sad day when you have these mainstream medias that used to be big on investigative journalism. Now they're just propaganda machines. And if you want any real investigative journalism, I mean, you have me. I'm going to freaking InfoWars now. InfoWars is now a more reliable source of news than all the mainstream media outlets. How sad is that? That's a dark day in America.
Or better yet, you don't even have to go with that route. You can say InfoWars is at least as reliable, if not more. Right. There's your bar right there, InfoWars.
Yeah, right? Like, it's ridiculous. I got to cipher through both of them, mind you, but I swear it's like InfoWars is right, like maybe like 80% of the time, whereas like CNN's right maybe like 15-20% of the time. Occupy Democrats still zero. But they got millions of schlubs willing to follow them. They just tell you what you want to hear, I guess.
Yeah, and it's not even like the mainstream in that sense either. Like, one of the few left-leaning sources that I at least would peruse was NPR.
Yeah.
And it's like, that they had their thing with their main one this year was trying to say that Trump Jr. committed perjury, and what happened was their own investigators couldn't line up a timeline.
Yeah, that sounds about right. It's what I find interesting is, like, even as we pointed out with PolitiFact, and no, actually it was Snopes.
Snopes and PolitiFact, actually. We tackled them both on.
Yeah. So, like, you remember where they had the headlines? And, like, the headlines was like, this is happening. And then, like, the whole article is, like, saying the total opposite. It's like they were counting on the fact that you're just going to read the headline, read that it's false, and you're just going to stop there. But if you read the whole article, it was actually calling out Zero Hedge because of what they said about
water usage in California.
Yeah, so the headline's like, Zero Hedge alleges this and it's false. And then, like, you read the article and it's totally the opposite. Like, they just count on you being an idiot and just reading the headlines. Like, that's their audience. That's who they're targeting. They're like, hey guys, let's just target sub 80 IQ people. And then, like, we'll have an actual article where somebody intelligent actually writes it. Nobody's going to read that. Like, that's how it comes off to me anyways. That's what I gather. But anyways, let's wrap it up. We're at 45 minutes, so doubt anybody made it this far. Got any final thoughts, Jake?
Oh, I thought you...
Man, I'm all out of ideas. I was leaving it up to you.
I thought you still had a little bit more to go with you. I guess I was...
Top three. That's what I had. 3.
Oh, well. Well, like I said, fake news. One way to prove an idiot right is just to completely lambast them. And I never got to really do it, but one of the ones that didn't make the cut for me is the tax reform 2.0. Before they tried to make the statement about the tax cuts that got put out that, no middle-class American would actually be getting a tax cut, which we went over that. And that was false.
Fake news.
Another reason not to vote for it, well, they're not permanent. The evil corporate Republicans, they wanted to give the business all the good stuff, but, this isn't permanent. And it's like, well, you could vote for it again, and it turns out there's a set of 3 different bills that came passed from the House, mostly Republican support, few Democrats, that are all about putting those tax reforms permanently for individuals. And that's just been sitting there. All the Senate has to do is approve that and let it go to the president, and individuals get their tax reductions permanent, just like the corporations. But they seem to be dragging their butt about that, and if the House is any marker on what the Democrats think, most of them aren't going to go support it either. So
yeah, go figure. All talk.
But that's about it for me. Hope everyone has a good new year, and hopefully there's less murkiness and insanity in the world. But
hope is irrational.
Maybe I'm just stating some fake news right now, right?
Well, at the very least, maybe we'll have some. Maybe we'll actually get that cast iron pan deal going that I was talking about earlier, and still it's looking like where I just moved recently, so I'm at a new command, so hopefully I'll have a little more time to invest into critical thoughts. Kind of been a little slumped here lately with the move, and came down with a pretty wicked flu I'm just now getting over with, so hopefully to do more contests this coming year, and finally finish out that damn video. All the series I was putting together, like I'm getting more and more. That's a good thing about it. While it sucks that it's taken me 2 freaking years, that's 2 more years of knowledge that I've gained and experience I can put towards that video to make it that much better for you, and hopefully you'll get something from it. Hopefully not end up as jaded as me by the end of it all. Maybe a little more wiser anyways, but yeah, that's all I got. Anything else, Jake?
No.
All right. Well, thank you for tapping into Critical Thoughts, breaking through the white noise, bringing you the media that matters.
Salute.
Skull.